Hi everyone, Medina here from Arise Humanity, and I have a fascinating topic that I would love to discuss with you today. There is a phenomenon happening globally, particularly in China at the moment, where there are many videos coming out where citizens of China are saying that the streets are empty, the shopping malls are empty, and basically there are very few people in public spaces anywhere in a lot of the uh, places in China now. The larger cities like Beijing and Shanghai, they're talking about how there's very few people there now in terms of the public places, but also the argument that they've gone to the rural areas is countered by saying that they're also noticing the same phenomenon happening in the rural areas of, empty rural towns and very few people in the rural towns. So basically what it looks like at the moment, and this seems to be something that's just happened pretty recently, certainly in 2025 or just in the last period of time in 2025, is that the population seems to be sort of disappearing, a lot of the people in China. And, the CCP statistics say that there are 1.4 billion Chinese people, and it's gone down by over a million, or I think roughly over a million since the whole COVID thing happened. However, a prominent Chinese researcher slash journalist says she estimates there could be 800 million, but she thinks it's more like 300 million in truth. And if you look at the videos below, and I've left some links below in the description, in these videos, many of the Chinese people, eyewitnesses, are talking about the streets being empty. And these spaces being empty. So this is really, really interesting. This is the physical sort of evidence of this happening. We're going to discuss the metaphysical in a minute. And then in my own personal experience, I noticed where I'm living here in Taree that it seems to be quite empty. I looked up the population statistics for Taree, and interestingly, as you can see here, it says that in 2021, and this was more evidence of what I'm talking about. It says in 2021 there were 26,500 people in the Taree area. And then I checked for 2024 now, and it says that the estimated population is approximately 17,000. Now that is roughly a drop of 10,000 people in 3 years, which is over 1/3 of the overall population of this area. It's gone down. Nobody talks about these things. Nobody's pointing out these discrepancies and these differences in population, or even what we're seeing with our own eyes, which is less people being around. And when I go for my walks on the major beautiful walk in Taree, which is the Manning River walk along the Manning River, there's very rarely many people at all. There's hardly any people ever walking along there. And it seems strange for such a beautiful walkway to have virtually no one there a lot of the time that we're walking there. Here's some footage of the place where I walk and what it often looks like, which is just basically us there, or maybe a person here or there, but it's very bare. And the shops, similarly, you go to the shops, there's not a lot of people. So I notice I can't compare, I have to admit, I can't compare to what it was like a few years ago because I've only been here a relatively short time in this particular town. But to me, for that population, wherever I look, it seems fairly sort of empty. I wonder what you're noticing out there. So are you noticing changes in how many people are around? I know that in one of Gene Decode's videos, he said that he had a vision of the future in a few years and he saw driving on the road that there were hardly any cars around when he was driving on a major highway, and prior to that time it was just packed with cars. But then in the future he saw very few cars there. So, you know, this is all very, very interesting. I talked to Grok to get Grok's opinion on what's happening in China, which is the Musk AI. And that was quite interesting. I'll share that with you. Grok talks about the different potentials for what this could mean. So I'll read you some of what Grok said. The idea of people disappearing into thin air is certainly intriguing and has sparked a lot of speculation, especially in recent years, with discussions about frequency shifts, alternate realities, and even a two-world split. So even Grok knows about this. While there's no hard scientific evidence to support a theory like this, I can explore some possibilities based on what's being talked about in various circles. Scientific, philosophical, even metaphysical. One angle could be psychological or perceptual. With the rapid pace of change in the world, technology, social dynamics, global events, some people might feel like others are disappearing because of a disconnect in shared reality. Think of it like a social or cognitive frequency shift. If someone's worldview or vibration, to borrow a metaphysical term, diverges sharply from yours, it might seem like they've vanished from your reality, even if they're still physically present somewhere. Another possibility ties into quantum mechanics or multiverse theories, which are more speculative but fun to consider. Some physicists entertain the idea that reality could split into parallel versions based on events or choices, though this is more about subatomic particles than people vanishing. The two-world split you mentioned could riff off this, suggesting that shifts in some cosmic or energetic frequency are sorting people into different timelines or dimensions. No one's disappearing into thin air so much as sliding into a reality you can't perceive anymore. The researcher or journalist who I mentioned earlier, the Chinese lady, she noticed in terms of data that there was a big drop that wasn't being reported in the official, reports of what's happening in China. But certainly from the footage that we're seeing from eyewitnesses in China that live there and can compare what it used to be like to what it's like now. I mean, I remember looking at China years ago in terms of the videos, and there were people everywhere. It was like sardines. The whole place was packed everywhere you looked. It was one of the most populated places on the entire planet. And now you look there and it's looking empty. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating what's happening. So in terms of the metaphysical side of things, there are different theories, as Grok mentioned. One is the two-world split. that there's basically now, and it's in play now, that there's all these high frequency energies coming down. They're being downloaded from the sun, these encodings and these sort of high frequency light energy that is raising the frequency of humanity and raising the frequency, and Mother Earth is also rising in her frequency. So as that's happening, people are gaining more light and they're rising. But then there are others who are below that vibration in density or frequency, and they can't maintain or sustain their energy in these rising frequencies. So they're just going to disappear. Which brings me to another point, that there are videos on the internet, and many of them actually have been censored or sort of taken off the internet. But there are people on camera being shown in CCTV footage and things like that, where the person near them is there and then the next minute the person's gone. So there are people literally disappearing.
Seriously disappearing. A lot of strange things have been happening in 2023, and this is something that is becoming quite common now. Let me show you guys a few videos, and of course, I want you guys to let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. That helps me a lot. Let's check out the video.
So that's one aspect. Then this dualistic world split, where people are going into a different reality that's more suited to their soul frequency. And again, this is nothing to be fearful of when you look at it in a spiritual, higher metaphysical way, in the sense that these are all soul choices. So a person chooses on a soul level where they want to go, and then they are and their choice is honored, and they go where they're comfortable. So some people might not be comfortable to ascend and move up to the higher spheres, and so they alternatively choose to stay in another reality that maybe is like the earth, 3D earth, but it's in a different place. So they move to this other space, place, dimension, realm, whatever you want to call it, which is basically a 3D earth that has been duplicated, and that's where they're suited to go. Then, of course, there are the souls that are much darker and denser. You know, they've committed horrible crimes, and they're very low in frequency, and there's a theory that they're going to be basically unable to sustain their frequency in the new energies, and they're going to be losing their individuality, and they'll be sort of dissolved into the Godhead, because at this time, the divine, God, creator, source, whatever you want to call that energy, has proclaimed that those energies are no longer allowed to continue as in this same way. So they're going to lose their individuation, and they're going to just dissolve altogether. The really low frequencies, people talk about that being less than like 20%, for example, or even less than that, and that they will be unable to go into the new earth, of course, because they'll be way too low. These are people that have committed crimes against humanity, and, you know, all those crimes against the little people and things like that. So they are definitely not going to be supported to evolve in the same way that higher beings are going to be permitted to move forward. Then there is the other aspect too of NPCs, non-player characters. So I've done a video on this before on non-player characters, but there is a theory that many people that we see around us are actually, it's like they don't have souls. They're non-player characters, but they're here to support our journey and our learnings, but they're not actual souls. They don't have proper souls. They don't have the same life force, but they're like holograms, or they're just things around us supporting our learning. So those NPCs, they might be a lot of the people, for example, in China that are disappearing too. So it looks like all these people are going, but they're actually just a holographic representation that has just left. So that's another theory. I'd love you to write in the comments, what are your thoughts on this? And then, of course, there is the information that we have about the impact of this thing that goes in the arm in China and everywhere. But, I mean, I've mentioned this before, but we have ambulances going up and down the road near us all the time, nonstop. Every time we drive out and for 3 minutes onto the road, we see ambulances going past. Apparently, they've been told to turn off their sirens, but, this is highly unusual. The amount of times we see and we hear, pretty much every time I could say that we go out, we see ambulances. This never used to happen, and it indicates that, for me, what we're hearing about this thing that went in the arm has the consequences of that are, really impacting humanity now. And so in China, at the beginning of the so-called COVID pandemic, when it first rolled out, there was footage of people falling down in the streets. There was photos and there was some footage, and I remember it quite clearly, but of course it all got wiped off the internet. You can't find it now, but there was images of that. So that was one thing that happened, and to me that could be a combination of this in the arm with 5G frequency weaponry, that sort of thing, that was impacting. And I think personally, I feel like many of the population in China were impacted by that in that way. But of course, it was all hidden and suppressed. And then right now, there are reports that many young people have been impacted as well, and are having side effects, and also going upstairs with the impacts of what. And hospitals are full over there, and also the crematoriums and things like that can't keep up with the demand as well. But that doesn't in itself account for the emptiness and the absolute disappearance of people when they're filming cities like Beijing and Shanghai and these really busy intersections on roads which used to be major thoroughfares of heaps of people going through, and now they're just virtually empty. So that doesn't account for that. So this is another thing, it seems, on top of all that's going on underneath. So my question is, are you noticing out there that there are less people around? Are you noticing it's sort of like a thinning in the population? Because everything that we are experiencing in the world at the minute, we're obviously not getting the full information from mainstream media or the major, news sources and outlets. So we have to get information from word of mouth, from people that we know, or we have to get information from what we can see with our own eyes and what we ourselves are experiencing. That's the only way. So if you're wanting to get information from the usual sources, you're not going to be noticing anything necessarily. But if you're utilizing these other ways of perceiving the world, then you might be noticing these differences. And I guess discernment and discrimination now are so important, because we have to rely on our own understanding of what's going on in the world, as opposed to looking at external sources to tell us what's happening. And this is one area that I think is so interesting to explore, because there has been so many spiritual reports of these different parallel realities, these sort of like two dual realities happening, where the earth splits, and we go one way and then the other energies go another way. And that could be exactly what is happening with China and what we're seeing happening now. But it's not something that's going to be presented to us in those terms. We have to sort of just intuit it as we're going along. So that's why I'd love to hear from anyone who is noticing this also happening wherever they are in the world. Would love to hear. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it has helped you to explore this topic further. And I love learning. So if you have anything that you want to share about this, please leave comments below. And I can't wait till I get the full story personally. But, I know we can't always know everything, because, we don't always have the ability to know everything. But I'm just so curious. It's fascinating. And I hope you're doing well out there. Have a beautiful few days, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you. Bye.